Hi everyone, welcome to US History 2 Assignment 8 about the Harlem Renaissance. We're going to learn about a little bit of Black art today. So our aim in this assignment is, what does the art of the Harlem Renaissance tell us about the Black experience in the 1920s? So we talked about the Spanish flu last lesson, and which ended in 1919, and the good news is just after the Spanish flu was done, we had this big explosion of art in the country, especially here in New York and Harlem. So I'm going to go over what the Harlem Renaissance was and what led up to it to kind of help you better answer the questions in the assignment. So the Harlem Renaissance took place in the 1920s, and it was a time when a lot of Black people had moved north, and specifically to Harlem in New York, the kind of northern part of Manhattan, and the Black art scene exploded. So there were, what I mean by that is there was all sorts of new Black artists that became very popular and very well known. And Harlem became kind of the place to be if you were interested in music, poetry, art, dancing, all that stuff, right? A lot of these things were popular like they never were before, and a lot of new clubs in Harlem opened up that catered especially to Black audiences. Clubs like the Cotton Club, the Savoy Ballroom, the Apollo, which is actually still open, an open club today. And as you can see, here's like a picture of a packed Harlem nightclub during the Harlem Renaissance. All right, so let's talk about what led up to the Harlem Renaissance, or what caused it. Okay, remember, slavery ended after the Civil War in 1865, right? And after that, there was actually this period called the Great Migration from the 1910s to the 1920s, when a lot of African Americans started moving from the South up to cities in the North, okay? They wanted to find better jobs, they were tired of farming, and they wanted to escape some of the violence that they were experiencing in the South, which I'll talk about also. But if you want to see like a map of how they moved, right? If you click on this blue type here where it says the Great Migration, and you click on the bookmark on the next page, all right, it shows you a map of here is where a lot of Black people were living, and then these green arrows show you that they headed towards big cities in the West and big cities in the North, all right? And we're going to look specifically at Harlem up here in New York. So, what else was going on that led to the Harlem Renaissance? Well, we learned before about Jim Crow laws and segregation, which took place from the 1890s to about the 1960s, all right? Remember, Jim Crow laws were laws after slavery ended that ordered separate public facilities for white and what they considered colored people, which would mean Black people, or if there was a high population of Hispanic people, it would also include Hispanic people. So that meant, you know, separate water fountains, separate bathrooms, separate schools, separate movie theaters, whatever you can think of. There was one for Black people and one for white people, okay? And also what was going on before the Harlem Renaissance, but there was a lot of backlash from white people after slavery ended in the late 1800s. A lot of white people were afraid of the power that Black people were gaining in society. So they tried to do different things to take that power away from them. For example, one way was through violence. Some white people would do what's called lynching, okay? Where if there was a Black person who was maybe accused of a crime, but they weren't found guilty, right? Or there was a rumor going around that they had done something bad, white mobs, without having a trial or anything, would sort of chase down and hang those Black people who were accused of often fake crimes from trees. Right, and they'd leave their bodies hanging there. Truly terrible. There was also groups like the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, right, that drove around and intimidated and sometimes even killed Black people, okay? We talked about voting, how they tried to take away Black people's voting rights in the South, especially by making Black people take literacy tests and pass them if they wanted to vote, right? Or charging Black people poll taxes. If they wanted to vote. So there's a lot of struggle going on, but amidst that, the Harlem Renaissance grew, all right? And the North became kind of a place that a lot of Black people went to. So some famous artists you might know from the Harlem Renaissance are Langston Hughes, he's a very famous poet, or any of these other people down here, okay? And today what you're gonna do is look at some of their work and see what it tells us about Black life at this time.